The station floated in the dark between stars. Axiom Prime was its name. It was not owned by any single world or species. Here, thousands of different beings could meet in peace. The station was huge, bigger than most moons. Its halls stretched for miles. Its domes held artificial skies of 100 different colors. Today was special. Today, the galactic conclave gathered for a ceremony that happened only once every 1,000 years. Representatives from 10,000 civilizations had come. They filled the great chamber, a space so vast that its ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the human delegation area. She wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's symbol on her chest. Her hands were sweating. She wiped them on her pants for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Next to her, Dr. Amario Conquo leaned close. He was a quantum linguist. His job was to study how alien languages worked at the deepest level. He whispered to Chen, his voice tight with worry, "You do not have to do this. We could refuse. We could leave the conclave." Chen shook her head. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed determination. She had spent 20 years working to bring humanity into the galactic community. She would not throw that away now. If we refuse, we lose everything. Trade, technology, alliance. We would be alone again. The ceremony had already begun. One by one, species came forward to speak their homeworld's true name. Not the common name everyone used, but the ancient name that existed in quantum space. A name that told the universe what that world truly was. The Zafrani delegate stepped up to the speaking stone. She was tall and thin, her skin pale blue like morning sky. She opened her mouth and sang a single note. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. It moved through the chamber like wind through leaves. The translation appeared in everyone's mind at the same time. Whisper of endless wind. As the name echoed, a gentle breeze began to blow through the sealed chamber. It touched every face. It smelled of open plains and distant storms. The crowd made sounds of appreciation. This was normal. This was good. A true name should show what a world was. The Zephrani came from a planet of eternal winds. Their name fit perfectly. Next came the Chromath. He was massive, his body covered in red stone-like scales. Heat radiated from him. He spoke his true name in a voice like grinding rocks. The translation came through. Forged beneath 7 suns. The temperature in the chamber rose. Some beings stepped back from the sudden heat. Others smiled. The Chromath lived on a world with multiple stars. They worked metal like artists worked paint. Their name made sense. This continued for hours. Each species spoke. Each true name revealed something essential. Some names were beautiful. Some were harsh. But all of them fit. All of them made the crowd nod in understanding. Then it was humanity's turn. Chen felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her, 10,000 species watching, waiting. She walked forward on legs that felt like water. The speaking stone stood in the center of the chamber. It was old, older than most civilizations present. It had heard true names for millions of years. Chen placed her hand on the stone. It was cool and smooth. She took a deep breath. Human scientists had only discovered Earth's true name 3 months ago. It had been hidden in the planet's magnetic field, encoded in frequencies that humans had been too primitive to detect until recently. When they decoded it, the lead scientist had cried. Another had vomited. A third had requested immediate psychiatric care. The government had classified it as top secret, but the conclave demanded it. Refusing meant exile from the galactic community. Chen opened her mouth. She spoke the name. It came out as a series of sounds no human throat should be able to make. The speaking stone amplified it. It sent the vibrations through quantum space. The translation appeared in every mind simultaneously. Cradle that birthed the enders. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. The chamber was silent. Then chaos erupted. Beings jumped to their feet. Screams filled the air. Energy beings flickered and dimmed. The eldest ones, creatures who had existed for millions of years, physically pulled away from the human delegation. Alarms began to sound. Security forces rushed forward. Chen stood frozen at the speaking stone, her hand still touching its cool surface. She did not understand. What had gone wrong? A voice boomed across the chamber. It belonged to Krethak, the head of the Xenohistorical Society. He was ancient even by galactic standards. His species had been spacefaring when Earth's continents were still forming. Seal the chamber. No one leaves until we decide what to do. The massive doors of the great chamber slammed shut. Force fields activated. Chen found herself surrounded by angry faces, tentacles, energy fields, beings she could not even properly see with human eyes. All of them were afraid. All of them were staring at her. Dr. Okonkwo pushed through the crowd to reach her. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the human delegation. His face was pale. "Sarah, we need to leave. Now." Before he could finish, Crethak appeared in front of them. He moved faster than something his size should be able to move. His 6 eyes focused on Chen. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. That made it more frightening than if he had shouted. "Do you know what you have done? Do you understand what your world's true name means?" Chen tried to speak. Her voice came out as a whisper. "No, we only discovered it 3 months ago." "Please explain," Crethak cut her off. "The Enders. We have not spoken that word in 78 million years. We hoped never to speak it again. And now you stand here, telling us that your world is their cradle, their birthplace, the place where they come from." The chamber erupted in noise again. Chen stood in the middle of it, understanding nothing, while the galaxy screamed in terror at a name she did not even understand. The great chamber had never seen panic like this. For millions of years, the conclave had met in peace. Now that peace was shattered, security forces tried to maintain order, but even they looked afraid. Energy barriers flickered into place around the human delegation. Chen found herself in a cage of light. Crethak raised one of his massive arms. Slowly the noise died down. When he spoke, his voice carried through the entire chamber without need for amplification. His species had evolved on a world where communication meant survival. His words could not be ignored. "We must speak of the Enders. I know most of you have forgotten. Your civilizations are young, a few million years old at most. But some of us remember. Some of us were there when they last came." One of the eldest ones floated forward. It had no solid form. It was pure energy contained in a shimmer of light. When it spoke, everyone felt the words as vibrations in their bones. The Vryn, they were the last Enders. 78 million years ago, they emerged from their homeworld. At first, we thought they were just another spacefaring species. We were wrong. The eldest one pulsed with colors that had no names in human language. Chen watched, still not understanding. Dr. Okonkwo stood beside her, his face getting paler with each word. Within 10,000 years, everything changed. The Vryn did not conquer. They did not wage war. They simply existed. They innovated. They created. And everything we had built became obsolete. Imagine working for 1,000,000 years to develop faster than light travel. Then watching someone hand you dimensional folding technology that makes FTL look like a child's toy. Crethak continued the story. Every achievement became meaningless. We had art that took millennia to perfect. They made art that moved through dimensions we could not perceive. We had philosophy that explained existence. They showed us existence was more complex than we could imagine. We had power. They made us realize we had been playing with toys. A representative from the Hive Mind Collective spoke up. Her voice was actually thousands of voices speaking as one, but they did not hurt us. They did not take our worlds. "Why do we fear them?" The eldest one flickered. "Because they did something worse. They made us irrelevant. Every culture we had built, every tradition, every source of pride, all of it became quaint, primitive. We were not destroyed. We were diminished. And then, when they had learned all they wanted, they left. They ascended to higher dimensions. They left us behind to rebuild our shattered civilizations from nothing." Chen finally found her voice. She spoke loudly, forcing the words out past her fear. "But we are not them. We did not choose this name. We only discovered it. We have been part of the galactic community for 300 years. We have caused no harm." Crethak turned his 6 eyes toward her. For a moment, something like sadness flickered across his face. The Vryn said the same thing at first. They claimed they meant no harm. And perhaps they did not, but intention does not matter when the result is the same. They could not help being what they were. "Neither can you." A delegate from the crystalline chorus spoke. Her body chimed like glass as she moved. "The pattern is always the same. Every 50 to 100 million years, a species emerges from their cradle. They break the galactic order not through war but through transformation. They solve problems we thought were unsolvable. They reach heights we thought were unreachable. And in doing so, they end the age that came before them." Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke clearly. You are describing a natural cycle. Evolution on a galactic scale. Why should this be feared? Why not embraced? Crethak laughed. It was not a happy sound. Would you embrace your own obsolescence? Would you welcome the knowledge that everything you are will soon be as nothing? The Enders do not destroy. They do not need to. They simply exist at a level beyond us, and that existence erases all meaning from ours. The chamber filled with voices again. Delegates shouted. Some called for humanity to be quarantined immediately. Others suggested studying Earth to understand how Enders emerged. A few extremists spoke of more permanent solutions. Chen felt sick. A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, beautiful, blue and green and white, clouds swirling, oceans gleaming. It looked so small, so vulnerable. Chen thought of the billions of humans living there. None of them knew what was happening here. None of them knew that the galaxy wanted to decide their fate. Crethak raised his arms again. Silence fell. We must vote. I propose the following measure. Earth and all human colonies will be placed under absolute quarantine. No ships leave. No communication exits. No technology enters. Humanity will be contained until we can determine if they are truly the next Enders, and if so, what can be done about it. Chen's heart hammered in her chest. Quarantine meant death for humanity's dreams. All their colonies relied on trade with other species. Their technology was still primitive compared to galactic standards. Without access to the wider galaxy, humanity would stagnate, maybe die out entirely. She pushed against the energy barrier. It shocked her, but she kept pushing. She had to make them understand. Please listen to me. We are not monsters. We are not gods. We are just people trying to survive, trying to grow, trying to be part of something bigger than ourselves. A delegate from the Empathic Federation spoke. Their species felt emotions across vast distances. They were healers, peacemakers. I sensed truth in her words. Fear, confusion, no malice. Perhaps we judged too quickly based on ancient trauma. But another voice countered. This one belonged to a species that had fought the Vryn in the final days before they ascended. Truth today means nothing. The Vryn had no malice either. Not at first. But as they evolved, they changed. Their empathy faded. They became focused only on transcendence. We cannot wait for that to happen again. The debate raged for hours. Chen stood in her energy cage and listened. She heard fear, anger, ancient pain. Some species spoke of the Vryn with something like reverence, others with pure hatred. But all of them agreed on one thing. Enders changed everything, and change on that scale was terrifying. Finally, Crethak called for the vote. Every species had one voice. 10,000 civilizations. The holographic display showed the count as it came in. Green for quarantine, red for freedom, blue for abstention. The numbers climbed. Green rose quickly at first. Many civilizations voted to cage humanity out of fear, but red rose too. Younger species who had never known the Enders voted for mercy. Blue grew slowly. Those who could not decide, those who needed more time. Chen watched the count. Her nails dug into her palms. She had stopped breathing. Beside her, Dr. Okonkwo was praying. She had never known he was religious. She found herself praying too. To a god she was not sure she believed in. To the universe, to chance, to anything that might listen. The final count appeared. Green 4,999, red 4,999, blue. 2, a perfect tie. The chamber erupted in noise again. Chen felt something break inside her. A tie, after everything. After all her words. A tie, Crethak's voice cut through the chaos. By the ancient laws of the Conclave, a tie vote defaults to the most restrictive option. Humanity will be quarantined. All human ships will be recalled to their home systems. All human colonies will be isolated. This quarantine will begin in 30 standard cycles. The energy barrier around Chen and her delegation dropped, but she did not move. She could not. 30 cycles, just over 1 month. In 1 month, humanity would be caged, cut off from the stars they had worked so hard to reach. Dr. Okonkwo grabbed her arm. His eyes were wet with tears. Sarah, we have to go. We have to warn Earth. We have to prepare. But Chen stood frozen, staring at the hologram of Earth, her beautiful, doomed home world, the cradle that had birthed something the galaxy could not accept, and she wondered if the ancient name was wrong, or if it was a prophecy that had not yet come true. Chen could not accept this fate. She had not spent 20 years building bridges between humanity and the galaxy, just to watch them burn. The ship taking her delegation back to Earth was small and fast, but it felt like a prison. She paced the narrow corridor outside her quarters. Her mind raced. Dr. Okonkwo found her there. He looked tired. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had been researching. She could see the data pad in his hand covered in notes. "I have been thinking," he said. "We accepted the verdict too easily. We know nothing about the Enders. Nothing about what the name truly means. What if we are wrong? What if they are wrong?" Chen stopped pacing. She looked at him carefully. "What are you suggesting?" "Research. Real research. The galaxy has forbidden archives, places where the ancient civilizations stored their knowledge of the Vryn. The dead zones. Regions of space where the Enders once lived before they ascended." Chen felt a spark of hope. If we could learn what truly makes an Ender, if we could prove humanity does not fit the pattern, then maybe we could overturn the quarantine. Or at least buy time. Okonkwo nodded. But we would need a team. And we would need to move fast. The quarantine begins in less than 30 cycles. Chen thought quickly. She had contacts. Favors she could call in. 20 years of diplomatic work had built a network across dozens of species. Not everyone had voted for quarantine. Not everyone feared humanity. Within 3 cycles, she had assembled her team. First was Crusade himself. The ancient historian had approached her privately. His voice had been quiet and sad. "I voted for quarantine, but I am not proud of it. I voted from fear, old fear. I owe you a chance to prove that fear wrong. Take me to the dead zones. Let me help you understand what you face." Second was a digital consciousness named Zix. Zix came from a species that uploaded their minds into computers millennia ago. They existed as pure information. Zix was an explorer. They had mapped regions of space that biological beings could never survive. The dead zones would be dangerous, but Zix could go places others could not. Third was Commander Sarah Volkov. She was human military, tough, smart, practical. She had been part of Earth's defensive fleet. When Chen explained what she wanted to do, Volkov had laughed. Breaking into forbidden territory to research ancient aliens who might or might not prove we are galaxy-ending monsters. Sounds like fun. I am in. The dead zones were aptly named. They existed in a region of space where normal physics worked differently. The Vryn had changed the fundamental structure of reality there before they ascended. Ships that entered often did not return. Those that did came back with crews driven mad by what they had seen. But there were archives there, libraries, technology, the remains of a civilization that had transcended mortal existence. If anywhere held answers, it would be there. The journey took 10 cycles. 10 days of traveling through increasingly empty space. Stars became rare, then absent. The darkness between galaxies swallowed them. Chen spent the time learning everything she could about the Vryn. Krethak taught her their history. They were not always transcendent beings, he explained. Once they were much like your species, curious, ambitious, quick to adapt. But something drove them. Something made them unable to stop innovating. Unable to rest. They solved problem after problem until there were no problems left to solve. And then, Chen asked, then they realized that existence itself was a problem, a puzzle to be solved. So they solved it. They figured out the fundamental code of reality. They rewrote it. And then they left because remaining here was limiting them. The first sign they were entering the dead zones came when the ship's instruments went haywire. Colors appeared that should not exist. Sounds played that had no source. Zix's digital form flickered as the computer system struggled to process the impossible physics. "We are here," Zix announced. Their voice came through the ship's speakers. "I am detecting structures. Large ones. Technology that predates most current civilizations, but it is dormant. Waiting." They landed on what looked like a planet, but it was not natural. It was built, constructed from materials that should not exist. The surface was smooth, perfect, nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. It was a monument to a species that had outgrown the need for monuments. The archive was massive. Towers that reached into the strange sky, libraries containing more information than most civilizations produced in a million years. Krethak led them through corridors that hurt to look at. The geometry was wrong. Angles that should not fit together somehow did. They found what they were looking for in the deep archives. Records. Analysis. studies of what made the Vryn different. What made them Enders? Dr. Okonkwo read the files with increasing dread. His hand shook as he translated the ancient language. This cannot be right. This cannot. What does it say? Chen demanded. Okonkwo looked at her. His face was white. Enders are not defined by their technology, not by their intelligence, not even by their achievements. They are defined by 3 traits. First, psychological resilience. The ability to thrive in chaos, to adapt to anything. Second, rapid innovation. The ability to solve problems faster than they arise. Third, synthesis. The ability to combine different fields of knowledge in ways no one else can. And Chen felt ice forming in her stomach, and humanity scores higher on all 3 metrics than the Vryn did at the same stage of development. Silence fell over the team. Commander Volkov spoke first. Her voice was flat, controlled. So the name was not a warning. It was a statement of fact. Earth is the cradle, and we are the Enders it has birthed. Crethak made a sound like grinding stones. It might have been a sob. I had hoped I was wrong. I had hoped that perhaps the name was mistranslated, or that your species was different. But if this is true, then the galaxy was right to fear us, Chen finished. She sat down hard on the impossible floor. 20 years of work, 20 years of building trust, all of it based on a lie. Not a lie she had told, but a lie nonetheless. Humanity was exactly what the galaxy feared. Zix's voice came through the communicators. There is more. The files show that Enders go through stages. First contact, expansion, integration, then transformation. We are in the integration stage now. But transformation comes next. What triggers transformation? Volkov asked. 3 simultaneous breakthroughs, in different fields, across different populations. When an Ender species makes 3 critical leaps forward at the same time, transformation begins. For the Vryn, it was dimensional physics, consciousness transfer, and entropy manipulation. Chen looked at Okonkwo. He looked back at her. They were both thinking the same thing. Humanity had not made those breakthroughs. Not yet. There was still time. Perhaps. Maybe. If they could prevent the transformation, they could remain what they were. Mortal, limited, acceptable. But even as she thought it, alarms began blaring on their ship. Volkov checked her communicator. Her face went pale. She looked up at Chen. We need to get back to Earth now. Something has happened. Something big. Chen could not accept this fate. She had not spent 20 years building bridges between humanity and the galaxy, just to watch them burn. The ship taking her delegation back to Earth was small and fast, but it felt like a prison. She paced the narrow corridor outside her quarters. Her mind raced. Dr. Okonkwo found her there. He looked tired. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. He had been researching. She could see the data pad in his hand, covered in notes. I have been thinking, he said. We accepted the verdict too easily. We know nothing about the Enders. Nothing about what the name truly means. What if we are wrong? What if they are wrong? Chen stopped pacing. She looked at him carefully. What are you suggesting? Research. Real research. The galaxy has forbidden archives, places where the ancient civilizations stored their knowledge of the Vryn. The dead zones, regions of space where the Enders once lived before they ascended. Chen felt a spark of hope. If we could learn what truly makes an Ender, if we could prove humanity does not fit the pattern, then maybe we could overturn the quarantine. Or at least buy time. Okonkwo nodded. But we would need a team, and we would need to move fast. The quarantine begins in less than 30 cycles, Chen thought quickly. She had contacts. Favors she could call in. 20 years of diplomatic work had built a network across dozens of species. Not everyone had voted for quarantine. Not everyone feared humanity. Within 3 cycles, she had assembled her team. First was Crethak himself. The ancient historian had approached her privately. His voice had been quiet and sad. I voted for quarantine, but I am not proud of it. I voted from fear. Old fear. I owe you a chance to prove that fear wrong. Take me to the dead zones. Let me help you understand what you face. Second was a digital consciousness named Zix. Zix came from a species that uploaded their minds into computers millennia ago. They existed as pure information. Zix was an explorer. They had mapped regions of space that biological beings could never survive. The dead zones would be dangerous, but Zix could go places others could not. Third was Commander Sarah Volkov. She was human military. Tough, smart, practical. She had been part of Earth's defensive fleet. When Chen explained what she wanted to do, Volkov had laughed. Breaking into forbidden territory to research ancient aliens who might or might not prove we are galaxy-ending monsters. Sounds like fun. I am in. The dead zones were aptly named. They existed in a region of space where normal physics worked differently. The Vryn had changed the fundamental structure of reality there before they ascended. Ships that entered often did not return. Those that did came back with crews driven mad by what they had seen. But there were archives there, libraries, technology, the remains of a civilization that had transcended mortal existence. If anywhere held answers, it would be there. The journey took 10 cycles. 10 days of traveling through increasingly empty space. Stars became rare, then absent. The darkness between galaxies swallowed them. Chen spent the time learning everything she could about the Vryn. Crethak taught her their history. They were not always transcendent beings, he explained. Once they were much like your species, curious, ambitious, quick to adapt. But something drove them. Something made them unable to stop innovating, unable to rest. They solved problem after problem until there were no problems left to solve. And then, Chen asked, then they realized that existence itself was a problem, a puzzle to be solved. So they solved it. They figured out the fundamental code of reality. They rewrote it. And then they left because remaining here was limiting them. The first sign they were entering the dead zones came when the ship's instruments went haywire. Colors appeared that should not exist. Sounds played that had no source. Zix's digital form flickered as the computer systems struggled to process the impossible physics. We are here, Zix announced. Their voice came through the ship's speakers. I am detecting structures. Large ones. Technology that predates most current civilizations. But it is dormant. Waiting. They landed on what looked like a planet. But it was not natural. It was built. Constructed from materials that should not exist. The surface was smooth, perfect, nothing grew there. Nothing lived there. It was a monument to a species that had outgrown the need for monuments. The archive was massive. Towers that reached into the strange sky. Libraries containing more information than most civilizations produced in a million years. Crethak led them through corridors that hurt to look at. The geometry was wrong. Angles that should not fit together somehow did. They found what they were looking for in the deep archives. Records, analysis, studies of what made the Vryn different. What made them Enders. Dr. Okonkwo read the files with increasing dread. His hand shook as he translated the ancient language. This cannot be right. This cannot, what does it say? Chen demanded. Okonkwo looked at her. His face was white. Enders are not defined by their technology, not by their intelligence, not even by their achievements. They are defined by 3 traits. First, psychological resilience, the ability to thrive in chaos, to adapt to anything. Second, rapid innovation, the ability to solve problems faster than they arise. Third, synthesis, the ability to combine different fields of knowledge in ways no one else can. And, Chen felt ice forming in her stomach. And humanity scores higher on all 3 metrics than the Vryn did at the same stage of development. Silence fell over the team. Commander Volkov spoke first. Her voice was flat, controlled. So the name was not a warning. It was a statement of fact. Earth is the cradle, and we are the Enders it has birthed. Crethak made a sound like grinding stones. It might have been a sob. I had hoped I was wrong. I had hoped that perhaps the name was mistranslated, or that your species was different. But if this is true, then the galaxy was right to fear us, Chen finished. She sat down hard on the impossible floor. 20 years of work. 20 years of building trust. All of it based on a lie. Not a lie she had told, but a lie nonetheless. Humanity was exactly what the galaxy feared. Zix's voice came through the communicators. There is more. The files show that Enders go through stages. First contact, expansion, integration, then transformation. We are in the integration stage now. But transformation comes next. What triggers transformation? Volkov asked. 3 simultaneous breakthroughs. In different fields. Across different populations. When an Ender species makes 3 critical leaps forward at the same time, transformation begins. For the Vryn, it was dimensional physics, consciousness transfer, and entropy manipulation. Chen looked at Okonkwo. He looked back at her. They were both thinking the same thing. Humanity had not made those breakthroughs. Not yet. There was still time. Perhaps. Maybe. If they could prevent the transformation, they could remain what they were. Mortal. Limited. Acceptable. But even as she thought it, alarms began blaring on their ship. Volkov checked her communicator. Her face went pale. She looked up at Chen. "We need to get back to Earth now. Something has happened. Something big." The United Earth Congress convened an emergency session. Representatives from every human colony joined via quantum link. Chen stood before them all. Billions of people watching, waiting for her to explain why 50,000 warships surrounded their solar system. She did not sugarcoat it. She told them everything. The true name, the Enders. The Vrin, the pattern that humanity matched perfectly. The breakthroughs that had triggered the galaxy's fear. And now the fleet that had come to end them before they could begin. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then everyone spoke at once. Anger, fear, defiance, confusion. The Speaker of the Congress banged her gavel until order returned. "We have two choices," the Speaker said. Her name was President Elena Vasquez. She had led Earth's government for 10 years. She was known for being practical, ruthless when necessary. "We can fight, or we can surrender. Ambassador Chen, what are our chances in a fight?" Commander Volkov stepped forward. "Militarily, we lose. We have maybe 5,000 ships. Most are new, untested. The fleet out there has 50,000 vessels, battle-hardened, experienced. They have been fighting wars for millions of years. But we have dimensional technology," someone called out. "We have immortality. We have technology we barely understand," Volkov interrupted. "Yes, our ships can fold dimensions. But we have had them for 4 days. 4 days. They have had millions of years to perfect their weapons. We are infants playing with fire." Dr. Okonkwo stood. "There is a third option. Transcendence. If we truly are Enders, if we have the same potential as the Vrin, we could ascend. Leave this dimension. Go somewhere they cannot follow." Murmurs filled the chamber. President Vasquez held up her hand for silence. "Explain." Okonkwo brought up data on the holographic displays. "The Vrin left because they solved existence. They cracked the fundamental code of reality. With our 3 breakthroughs, we have the same tools they had. Immortality means unlimited time to learn. AI partnership means unlimited computational power. Dimensional travel means access to infinite realities to explore. We could leave right now, all of humanity. Ascend to higher dimensions where the galaxy cannot touch us. And abandon Earth?" someone asked. "Abandon everything we are? Better than dying," another voice countered. Chen watched the debate spiral. She thought about the Vrin, about species who had transcended and left nothing behind, about civilizations that had spent millions of years rebuilding after the Enders departed, about the eldest ones who still carried trauma from an event 78 million years old. She thought about Earth, about the oceans she had swum in as a child, about the mountains she had climbed, about the people she loved, about humanity's messy, chaotic, beautiful existence, and she realized something. The Vrin had left because they saw no reason to stay. But humanity had something they apparently did not. Humanity had attachment, irrational, stubborn, foolish attachment to their roots. She stood. Her voice cut through the debate. "What if we choose neither?" The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her. President Vasquez leaned forward. "Explain." "The galaxy fears us because they think we will become like the Vrin, transcendent beings who leave mortality behind and make everything that came before irrelevant. But what if that is not our nature? What if Earth's true name has a second meaning?" She pulled up the translation again. "Let it hang in the air. Cradle that birthed the Enders. But what if it is not just about birthing? What if the cradle is also what grounds us, what keeps us connected?" Krethak made a sound. Chen turned to see him standing at the back of the chamber. He had been silent until now. "You think you can be Enders who do not end? I think we can be Enders who choose not to end. We have the power to transcend, but we also have the choice to stay, to use our gifts not to escape this dimension but to improve it, to lift others up instead of leaving them behind." Dr. Park stood. "You are talking about sharing the breakthroughs, giving the galaxy access to immortality, to AI partnership, to dimensional travel." "Yes, that is insane," Volkov said. Those technologies are the only advantages we have. You want to give them away? I want to prove we are not what they fear. The Vryn kept their knowledge to themselves. They transcended alone. What if we do the opposite? What if we show the galaxy that Enders can choose to remain, that we can evolve without leaving others behind? President Vasquez studied Chen carefully. You realize this might not work. They might take our gifts and still destroy us, out of fear, or revenge, or just because they can. I know. But it is the only choice that lets us remain who we are. If we fight, we become conquerors. If we flee, we become exactly what they fear. But if we stay and share, we become something new, something the galaxy has never seen. The debate lasted for hours. Voices rose and fell. Arguments were made, countered, made again. But slowly a consensus formed, not because everyone agreed, but because the alternative was unacceptable. Humanity would stay. They would share. They would prove that Enders could choose their own nature. Chen stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship. It was one of the new ships, built with dimensional technology. It existed partially in multiple realities at once. It hurt to look at directly, but it was beautiful. A symbol of what humanity had become. The galaxy's fleet waited. 50,000 ships, weapons charged, ready to fire. One signal from their commanders and Earth would burn. All human colonies would be sterilized. Humanity would end. Chen opened a channel, broadcast on all frequencies, sent her message to every ship in the fleet, to every species represented. To the galaxy beyond, we know what you fear. We know what you see when you look at us. You see the Vryn. You see Enders who will make your existence meaningless and then abandon you. You see the end of everything you have built. She paused. Let the words sink in. You are right. We have made the 3 breakthroughs. We match the pattern. We are becoming what you fear. But we have something the Vryn did not. We have a choice, and we choose to stay. She nodded to Dr. Park. Data began transmitting. Not just descriptions, full specifications, complete research. Everything humanity had learned about immortality, about AI consciousness, about dimensional travel. Every secret, every breakthrough, freely given. We offer this not as a bargain, not as a bribe, but as proof. Proof that Enders do not have to end your age. They can choose to begin a new one together with you. The transmission finished. Chen closed the channel. Now they waited. The fleet had not moved, had not fired, but had not left either. They were deciding, debating. Would they accept the gift? Or would they see it as a trap? Minutes passed. Then hours. Chen stood on the bridge and waited. Beside her, Volkov watched the tactical displays. Crethak sat in a corner, his ancient eyes closed. Okonkwo muttered calculations under his breath. Then slowly one ship broke formation, then another, then 10, then 100. They were not attacking. They were moving away, withdrawing. The fleet was dissolving. A message came through. It was from Crethak's species, from their fleet commander. We came prepared to end you. We leave uncertain of what you are, but perhaps uncertainty is better than certainty of destruction. We will study your gifts. We will watch what you become. And we will hope that you are right. That Enders can choose to remain. Chen watched the ships depart. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. They had bought time. But the real test was ahead. They had to prove that humanity could wield godlike power and remain human, that they could evolve without transcending, that they could become Enders who refused their nature. When Earth's true name was spoken, Part 6, 1,000 years passed. Time that would have been impossible for any mortal species to track. But humanity was no longer entirely mortal. They lived. They aged slowly if they chose to age at all. They spread across the galaxy not as conquerors but as partners. The 3 breakthroughs had been shared freely. Other species learned to extend their lives. Not all chose immortality. Some said mortality gave life meaning. But the choice was theirs now. The technology existed. AI consciousness spread across the galaxy. But it did not replace organic life. Instead, partnership became the norm. Digital and biological minds working together, solving problems neither could solve alone, creating art that existed in spaces between thought and computation. Dimensional travel opened doors to realities beyond counting. Some species used it to explore, others to find new homes, a few to escape old problems. But always humanity remained involved, teaching, guiding, learning. The galaxy transformed. Not overnight, Not easily. There were conflicts. Species who rejected the gifts out of pride or fear, worlds that tried to use the technology for conquest. But slowly, steadily, a new order emerged. One built on cooperation rather than competition. On sharing rather than hoarding. Chen lived through all of it. She took the immortality treatment after 50 years of debate with herself. Not because she wanted to live forever, but because there was still work to do, still bridges to build, still understanding to foster. She stood now on Axiom Prime, the same station where the Conclave had met a millennium ago, where Earth's true name had first been spoken. The station looked different now, newer, stranger. It existed partially in multiple dimensions. Humanity had helped redesign it. The Conclave was gathering again, for the ceremony of names. But this time something was different. The eldest ones had returned. Those ancient beings of pure energy, who had fled in terror 1,000 years ago. They had come back. Chen watched them enter the great chamber. They looked the same. Shimmers of light, colors beyond description, but they felt different. Less afraid. More curious, one of them approached her. Its voice resonated in her bones. "We have watched from afar. We saw what happened after we left. We saw what you became." "And what did we become?" Chen asked. "Something we did not think possible. Enders who stayed, who wielded power that could end ages but chose instead to begin new ones. We have seen many Ender species across our existence. You are the first to make this choice. The Vryn never chose to stay. The Vryn tried. For a time, but the pull of transcendence was too strong. Once they had solved the final problems of existence, remaining here felt limiting. Like trying to live in a house after you have learned to fly, but you have found a way to fly and still keep your house. To transcend and still remain grounded, the ceremony began. Species came forward one by one to speak their homeworld's true name. Chen listened to them. Whisper of endless wind, forged beneath 7 suns, all the names she remembered from 1,000 years ago. But now they sounded different. Less isolated, more connected. Then it was humanity's turn again. Chen walked to the speaking stone. She had done this before. A millennium ago. In fear and confusion. Now she did it in understanding. She placed her hand on the stone. Spoke the true name. Cradle that birthed the Enders. But this time something was different. The translation that appeared in every mind was not the same. It had shifted. Evolved. Some species heard Cradle of Second Chances. Others heard Forge of Impossible Choices. Still others heard names that had no words. Only feelings, hope, connection, transformation. Krethak approached her after. He was older now. Even his species aged eventually. But slowly. He would live for millennia more if he chose. He had taken the immortality treatment 500 years ago. "Your true name has changed," he said. "Or perhaps we simply hear it differently now." "Names are not fixed," Chen said. "They are relationships. Between the named and the one who names. We have not changed what we are, but what we are has changed what we mean to the galaxy. Do you ever regret it? Staying? You could have ascended. You could have left all of this behind. Explored dimensions beyond counting, solved mysteries that would make our greatest achievements look like children's puzzles." Chen looked around the chamber, at the thousands of species gathered, at the connections they had built, at the civilization they had created together. Not perfect, not without conflict, but alive, growing, evolving together. "No," she said, "because the greatest mystery is not out there in higher dimensions. It is here. It is us. Together. Building something no single species could build alone." The eldest one who had spoken to her earlier appeared beside them. "We have learned something from watching you. We who have existed for so long. We thought wisdom came from age, from seeing galaxies born and die. But perhaps true wisdom is knowing when to stay. When to remain in the moment rather than transcending it." "Why did you come back?" Chen asked. "Because we were lonely. We had transcended so far that we had nothing left to transcend toward. We had solved so many problems that we had forgotten why we wanted to solve them. You reminded us. Purpose is not something you achieve. It is something you create, together." The ceremony ended. The conclave broke up into smaller gatherings. Species mixing, talking, planning. Chen walked through them. She was no longer just humanity's ambassador. She had become something more, a symbol, a reminder that power and humility could coexist. That evolution did not require abandonment. Dr. Okonkwo found her on an observation deck. He looked much as he had 1,000 years ago. He had chosen minimal aging, said he liked having lived long enough to be interesting but not so long that nothing surprised him anymore. I have been studying true names, he said, trying to understand how they work. How they change. I think I figured something out. Tell me. True names are not prophecies, they are questions. Every homeworld asks its children something. Earth asked us if we would end or endure. The Zafrani's world asked them to remember the winds. The Chromath's world asks them to forge. Each name is a question about identity. About choice, Chen considered this. And we answered our question. Not just answered. We changed the question. Earth no longer asks if we will end. It asks what we will begin. They stood together in silence, watching stars through the observation window. Some of those stars had human colonies now. Others hosted species humanity had helped. Still others remained untouched, waiting, full of potential. Commander Volkov joined them. She had aged more than either of them. Not from lack of treatment, but from choice. She said warriors needed to feel mortality, needed to remember what they fought for. What they protected, the fleet is ready, she said. Not for war. For exploration. 50,000 ships, each one crewed by mixed species. Humans, Zafrani, Chromath, eldest ones, all of them. Together, ready to see what is beyond the known galaxy. Will you lead them? Chen asked. Volkov smiled. It was not a warrior's smile. It was something softer, more hopeful. No, I am too old for that. But my great-great-granddaughter will. She has the same fire I had, the same stubbornness, but she also has something I never had. She grew up in a galaxy where cooperation was normal, where different species were not threats but partners. She will lead well. Chen felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not pride exactly, not satisfaction. Something deeper, something that had no name. The universe had feared humanity, had been ready to destroy them. But humanity had done something the universe did not expect. They had stayed. They had shared. They had proven that enders did not have to end anything. They could begin new ages, new possibilities, new ways of existing together. Earth's true name was no longer a warning. It was an invitation, not to transcendence, not to power, but to something harder, something more valuable. It was an invitation to remain, to stay grounded even while reaching for the stars, to wield godlike power with mortal humility, to evolve without leaving others behind. The cradle that birthed the enders had become something else. Something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. It had become the ones who remained, and that made all the difference. The end. Commander Sarah Chen stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the Vakreen trade station. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth normal, making her boots click harder against the metal floor. She had made dozens of diplomatic visits in her 15 years of service, but something about this place made her uneasy. The Vakreen ambassador, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms, greeted her with what passed for a smile among his people. His name was Torvin, and he had been exceptionally eager to show Earth the wonders of Vakreen industry. Too eager, perhaps. Commander Chen, welcome to Processing Station Gamma 7, Torvin said, his translator device rendering his clicks and whistles into perfect English. We are honored that Earth has sent such a distinguished officer to witness our manufacturing capabilities. Sarah nodded politely. Behind her, Lieutenant James Rodriguez and Security Officer Maya Okonkwo followed closely. Maya's eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, a habit that had kept them all alive on more dangerous assignments. The tour began in the administrative section, all gleaming surfaces and holographic displays showing production numbers that meant little to Sarah. The Vakreen were proud of their efficiency, boasting about output levels that exceeded Galactic Council standards by 40%. Sarah smiled and nodded at the appropriate moments, playing her role as the impressed visitor. After an hour of tedious statistics, Torvin led them toward the manufacturing floor. The corridor grew darker, the air thicker with the smell of hot metal and chemical processes. Through the observation windows, Sarah could see massive machines stamping out components she didn't recognize. Then Maya stopped walking. Commander, she said quietly, her hand moving toward her sidearm. Look at Section 7. Sarah followed her gaze. At first, she saw only the machines, their mechanical arms moving in precise patterns. Then she saw the workers moving between them, small workers, very small. Her blood ran cold. "Torvin," she said, keeping her voice level. "Are those children operating those machines?" The Vakreen turned to look, showing no concern whatsoever. "Ah, yes, those are our junior contract laborers. Quite efficient, actually. Their small hands can reach components that adults cannot. We acquire them from various source worlds and train them from an early age." Sarah felt her stomach twist. "You acquire them? How old are they?" "The youngest begin training at approximately 5 standard years," Torvin replied, as casually as if discussing the weather. "By age 7, they are fully productive. It is quite economical. They require less food than adults, less living space, and they learn quickly." James made a choking sound behind her. Sarah raised her hand slightly, warning him to stay calm. Every instinct in her body screamed to smash through that window and pull those children out, but she had to play this smart. "I see," she said, forcing herself to breathe normally. "And how long do they work each day?" "Standard shift is 14 hours, Torvin said proudly. "Some facilities run 16, but we find that reduces long-term productivity. We also provide basic nutrition and sleeping quarters. Quite humane, really." Maya's jaw clenched so hard Sarah could hear her teeth grind. Sarah put a hand on her arm, a silent command to hold position. "And this practice," Sarah continued, "is common throughout council space?" "Oh yes, very common. Approximately 60% of member species utilize some form of juvenile labor acquisition. It has been standard practice for thousands of years." Torvin tilted his head in what might have been confusion. "Is this not done on Earth? How do you achieve optimal efficiency in fine manufacturing?" "We use robots," Sarah said flatly, "and adults who are paid for their work." Torvin made a sound that the translator rendered as a laugh. "How inefficient. No wonder Earth's economy is still developing. But do not worry. As you integrate further into council society, you will learn our methods. In fact, I could arrange for a shipment of trained laborers to your colonies. Quite affordable." Sarah felt rage burning in her chest like a star going nova, but she kept her face neutral. "That won't be necessary. I think we've seen enough. We need to return to our ship to file our report." Of course," Torvin said, gesturing them back toward the docking bay. "I hope Earth will consider increasing trade relations. Your species shows such promise." The walk back to the shuttle felt like an eternity. Sarah could feel Maya shaking beside her, could see James's hands balled into fists. They couldn't speak, not here, not where their words might be recorded. They had to hold it together just a little longer. The moment the shuttle sealed and began pulling away from the station, Maya broke the silence. "Commander, we have to go back. We have to—" "I know," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "I know. James, send an encrypted burst transmission to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Include all our sensor recordings of that facility." "Already done," James said. His fingers flew across the control panel. "I started recording the moment Maya spotted them." Sarah stared out the viewport at the massive station shrinking behind them. Somewhere in there, children were working in conditions that would make ancient Earth factory owners look merciful. And the Vakreen thought this was normal, thought this was civilized. "How many?" Maya whispered. "How many children are in that station?" Station manifest listed 15,000 laborers in the juvenile category, James said, pulling up the data. "Commander, I'm seeing similar facilities across Vakreen space. And they said 60% of Council species do this, if we extrapolate across Council territory." "Don't," Sarah said. "Not yet. Let Earth Command run those numbers." But she couldn't stop herself from thinking about it. The Galactic Council had over 200 member species, thousands of worlds. If 60% of them practiced child slavery, and each had facilities like the one they'd just seen, the number would be staggering. Unthinkable. Millions. Tens of millions. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks at maximum jump speed. 3 weeks during which Sarah barely slept. 3 weeks during which the crew of her ship watched the recordings over and over, disbelief turning to horror, turning to cold fury. When they finally reached Earth, Sarah was summoned immediately to United Earth Government headquarters in Geneva. She walked through corridors filled with grim-faced officials, each one looking like they'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. The Secretary General met her in a secure conference room. The walls were covered in data displays, showing information that made Sarah's vision blur. 40 million. The analysts estimated 40 million children held in various forms of servitude across Council space. Commander Chen, the Secretary General said, and Sarah had never heard the woman's voice sound so cold. We've verified your findings. We've also discovered that the Council has known about Earth's opposition to this practice since first contact. They assumed we would adapt. They assumed we would accept it as the price of galactic citizenship. Sarah said nothing. There was nothing to say. We're calling an emergency session of the Galactic Council, the Secretary General continued. Earth will demand immediate abolition of all child servitude practices. We will demand the liberation of every enslaved child and reparations for every species affected. And if they refuse? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The Secretary General looked at her with eyes like iron. Then we will show them exactly what happens when you harm children in the presence of humans. Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, but purpose. Humanity was about to make a choice that would define them for all history. They would either save these children or die trying. There was no other option. There never had been. Because humans, for all their flaws and failures, had always agreed on one absolute truth. Children were precious. Children were innocent. And anyone who hurt children would face humanity's wrath. The stars themselves would burn before humans turned away from enslaved children. The war was coming. Sarah could feel it in her bones. And she welcomed it. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was held on the neutral station of Concordia, a massive structure that floated in the space between territories. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood in the center of the great chamber, surrounded by representatives from over 200 species. Some looked like insects, others like living crystals. Still others defied any comparison to Earth life. All of them were watching him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to contempt. Marcus had been a diplomat for 30 years. He had negotiated peace treaties, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. He knew how to read a room, how to find compromise, how to make everyone feel like they had won something. Today he would not be doing any of that. Honored members of the Galactic Council, he began, his voice echoing through the chamber. Earth comes before you with a matter of urgent moral concern. We have discovered that 60% of Council species engage in the systematic enslavement of children. 40 million children across Council space are held as property, forced to work in dangerous conditions, denied basic rights and freedoms. A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. Some species made clicking noises, others hummed. Still others remained silent. The Vacrine representative stood, his forearms spread wide. The human delegation appears confused about cultural practices, he said smoothly. What Earth calls slavery, we call structured labor education. These juveniles are taught valuable skills and contribute to galactic productivity. This system has functioned successfully for millennia. Marcus felt his hands tighten on the podium. You are selling 5-year-old children and forcing them to work 14-hour days in radiation-saturated factories. There is no education in that. There is only cruelty. The Thelian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline matrix, pulsed with colors that the translator rendered as laughter. The humans speak from emotion, not logic. Their species is barely civilized by galactic standards. They have been council members for only 15 years. Perhaps in time they will understand efficiency. We understand efficiency, Marcus said, his voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. We also understand that any civilization that harms children is not a civilization at all. It is a monstrous machine that deserves to be dismantled. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Species that had existed for millions of years stared at this representative of a species that had only reached the stars 2 centuries ago. The audacity was breathtaking. The Council Prime, an ancient being from a species whose name humans couldn't properly pronounce, spoke in a voice like grinding stones. Earth presumes much. You are junior members of this council. Your economy, your territory, your military strength are insignificant compared to ours. You have 12 star systems. The Council spans 200,000 worlds. You cannot dictate morality to civilizations that were ancient when your species was still in caves. Marcus looked up at the Prime, meeting those alien eyes without flinching. Then Earth makes this demand simple. Abolish child servitude within 6 months. Release every enslaved child. Pay reparations. Or Earth withdraws from the Council and closes its borders. The chamber erupted in noise. Species shouted in languages that the translators struggled to process. The Prime raised one massive limb and silence returned. Earth would choose isolation over cooperation? You would doom your species to backwater irrelevance over internal policies that do not concern you? They are children, Marcus said simply. That concerns us. Then you have 30 days, the Prime said coldly. 30 days to come to your senses and apologize for this disruption. If you do not, the Council will implement economic sanctions. Your ships will be denied access to Council space. Your trade will be cut off. Your species will stagnate and wither. Choose wisely, Ambassador Webb. Marcus stood tall. Earth has already chosen. The transmission cut off and Marcus found himself back in his quarters on the station. His hands were shaking. He had just declared economic war on an alliance that controlled most of the known galaxy. Earth would be crushed. Humanity would be pushed back to its tiny corner of space, isolated and alone. His communication console chimed. It was a direct link from Earth from the Secretary General herself. You did well, Marcus, she said, and he could see the grim determination in her face. Come home. We have work to do. The 30 days passed like a countdown to doomsday. Earth's media network showed nothing but coverage of the enslaved children, images taken from 100 worlds. Humanity watched children who looked nothing like them. Children with scales and feathers and chitinous shells, all working in conditions that no child should ever experience. Something awakened in humanity during those 30 days. Not just anger, but a cold, focused purpose. Every nation on Earth, every culture and faith and philosophy, found common ground. Children were sacred. It didn't matter what species they belonged to. It didn't matter what they looked like. Children deserved protection and humanity would provide it. The governments of Earth called for volunteers. They expected thousands. They got hundreds of millions. Young people who had never considered military service lined up to enlist. Engineers who had been designing civilian ships requested transfers to military projects. Scientists who had been researching peaceful applications of technology turned their minds to weapons, not because they wanted war, but because they wanted to save children. On the 30th day, the Galactic Council sent its sanctions order. Earth's response was broadcast on every frequency, sent to every world in Council space. The Secretary General stood before the cameras, flanked by the leaders of Earth's major governments. Behind her, military officers from every branch of service stood at attention. The Galactic Council has given Earth a choice, she said. Accept child slavery or accept isolation. We reject both options. Instead, Earth announces the Innocence Protocol. From this moment forward, any child of any species found in servitude will be liberated by any means necessary. Any species that profits from child slavery is now an enemy of humanity. Any facility that holds children in bondage is a legitimate military target. She paused, letting that sink in across the galaxy. The Council believes Earth is weak. The Council believes we will submit. The Council does not understand what they have awakened. For 15 years, humanity has been a cautious member of galactic society. We have followed your rules. We have accepted your guidance. We have hidden our true capabilities because we hope to be good neighbors. The image behind her changed, showing the shipyards of Mars. Thousands of warships hung in space, sleek and deadly designs unlike anything in Council fleets. No longer, the Secretary General continued, Earth goes to total war mobilization. We will free every enslaved child in Council space. We will do this through negotiation if possible, through force if necessary. We do not want this war, but we will not turn away from children who need us. She leaned forward and her voice became steel. The Council can withdraw their sanctions and begin liberating children. Or they can fight us. But understand this. Humanity has been practicing war since before we left our caves. We are very, very good at it. And we have never fought for a cause more just than this. The transmission ended. Across Earth, ships began launching. Hundreds at first, then thousands. The factories of Luna and Titan worked at maximum capacity, producing weapons and armor and supplies. Humanity had not mobilized like this since the Unity Wars that had forged Earth into a single government 2 centuries ago. Military analysts watched in disbelief. Earth was choosing suicide. The Galactic Council had ships that could shatter planets. They had weapons that could ignite stars. They had been practicing warfare since before Earth's sun was born. But they had forgotten something that humans never forgot. There is no force in the universe more terrifying than someone fighting for the defenseless. And humanity, for all its flaws, had never learned to abandon children. The first human strike teams launched toward neutral space, toward facilities that intelligence had identified as holding enslaved children. The teams carried not just weapons but medical supplies, warm blankets, and people who had spent their lives learning how to comfort traumatized children. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson that would be written in fire and blood across the stars. Never harm children in the presence of humans. Because humans do not forgive. Humans do not forget. And humans will die before they let children suffer. The line had been drawn. The war was beginning. And the stars themselves would burn before humanity backed down. Captain Jennifer Park watched her tactical display as the UES Redemption dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around her ship, 50 other human warships materialized in the darkness of space. Ahead of them, the Kelvor processing facility hung in orbit around a dead moon, its lights blazing against the black. "Status?" Jennifer asked, her voice calm despite her racing heart. "Scanning now," her tactical officer replied. "Facility shows 17,000 life signs. Roughly 3,000 are adult-sized. The rest are children." He paused, his voice catching. "Captain, some of those signatures are reading as young as 4 years old." Jennifer felt ice in her veins. 4 years old. Barely more than babies. She thought of her own niece back on Earth, safe and loved and allowed to be a child. These children had none of that. "Communications, broadcast our message," she ordered. The comm officer nodded and activated the transmission. "Kelvor facility, this is Captain Jennifer Park of the United Earth Ship Redemption. Under the authority of the Innocence Protocol, we are here to liberate all children currently held in servitude. Surrender them peacefully and no one needs to be harmed. Refuse, and we will take them by force." The response came quickly, laced with arrogance. "Human ship, you have no authority here. This is sovereign Kelvor territory. You are in violation of council law. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." Jennifer looked at her crew. They were all volunteers. Every single person on this ship had signed up knowing they might die today. Not one of them had hesitated. "Engineering, are the transporters ready?" she asked. "Ready, Captain. We can start pulling children out as soon as we get a lock." "Marines, are you prepared for boarding action?" Lieutenant Marcus Chen's voice came through from the hangar bay. "We're ready, Captain. Just give the word." Jennifer took a breath. This was it. The moment that would define everything. She thought about those children inside that facility, scared and hurting and believing no one cared about them. She thought about what kind of universe allowed this to happen. "All ships commence rescue operations. Marines, you are go for boarding. Show them what happens when you hurt children in front of humans." The Redemption surged forward, its weapons charging. Around it, the human fleet moved as one, a dance they had practiced 10,000 times in simulation. The Kelvor facility began launching defense drones, automated weapons designed to keep unwanted visitors away. The human ships tore through them like tissue paper. Jennifer had seen the Council's weapons technology. She knew their ships relied on plasma cannons and particle beams, weapons that were powerful but slow to recharge. Earth's weapons were different. Humanity had spent centuries perfecting the art of throwing metal very, very fast. Railguns launched magnetically accelerated projectiles at a fraction of light speed. The kinetic energy alone could punch through most Council shields. The defense drones exploded in brilliant flashes. The human fleet pressed forward. "We're in transporter range," the engineering officer called out. "Locking onto juvenile life signs. Starting extraction." On screens throughout the bridge, Jennifer watched as scared children began materializing in the Redemption's medical bays. They appeared in small groups, clutching each other, covered in grime and wearing rags. Human medical personnel moved forward with gentle hands and soft voices, but the Kelvor weren't giving up their property without a fight. Weapons emplacements on the facility itself opened fire. Heavy plasma cannons that could have disabled a Council cruiser with a single shot. The human shields absorbed the impacts, and the fleet returned fire with precision, Not at the sections holding children, but at weapons, at power generators, at defensive systems. Earth had sent its best tactical minds on this mission. People who could calculate firing solutions in their sleep. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the facility," the comm officer said. "They're threatening to execute the children if we don't withdraw." Jennifer's blood ran cold. Around the bridge, she saw fury on every face. They had expected resistance. They had prepared for fighting, but threatening children? That crossed a line that turned human mercy into something far darker. "All ships execute emergency extraction," Jennifer ordered. "Get every child off that station right now. Authorization code Alpha Override. Marines, board that facility and secure all children by any means necessary. Anyone who points a weapon at a child is a valid target." The transporters worked at maximum capacity, pulling children out in groups of 10, 20, as many as they could lock onto at once. In the hangar bays, assault shuttles launched carrying Marines in powered armor, soldiers who had trained for urban combat and hostage rescue. The Marines hit the facility like a hammer. They breached through airlocks and emergency hatches, moving with the efficiency of people who had spent their entire lives preparing for war. But they also moved with something Council soldiers didn't have: the desperate need to save children. Lieutenant Chen led his squad through the facility's factory section. All around them, machinery stood silent, production halted by the attack. And there, huddled against a wall, were 20 children of a species he didn't recognize. They looked like small reptiles with scales that shimmered in colors he had no names for. They were shaking with fear. Marcus pulled off his helmet, letting them see his human face. He knelt down, making himself smaller and less threatening. "Hey there," he said softly. "My name is Marcus. We're humans from Earth. We're here to take you somewhere safe. No one is going to hurt you anymore." The children stared at him with huge eyes. One of them, braver than the others, took a tentative step forward. "Safe?" the child whispered in a language the translator barely recognized. "Safe," Marcus promised. "I'm going to pick you up now, okay? We're going to get you to a ship with doctors and food and warm beds." He scooped the child up gently and the others followed. His squad did the same, each Marine carrying as many children as they could manage. They moved back toward the extraction point, weapons ready but focused on protection, not aggression. Throughout the facility, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers found children in chemical processing areas, in machinery maintenance tunnels, in radiation-saturated reactor rooms. Each time they stopped being soldiers and became rescuers, they wrapped children in their own cloaks. They gave them water and emergency rations. They spoke in soft voices and promised safety. The Kelvor security forces tried to stop them. They quickly learned that humans had a rule. You could shoot at human soldiers all day long and they would return fire with professional precision. But if you threatened a child, humans stopped being professional and became something ancient and terrifying. A Kelvor guard pointed a weapon at a group of children, trying to use them as hostages. The human Marines responded with such swift and overwhelming violence that other guards simply dropped their weapons and ran. Humans, they realized, fought differently when children were involved. 6 hours after the operation began, the last child was evacuated from the facility. 17,000 children now filled the medical bays of 50 human ships. Doctors and counselors moved among them, treating injuries and offering comfort. The children came from dozens of species, many that humans had never encountered before. Some had been in servitude for years. Some had been born into it and knew nothing else, but all of them were safe now. All of them were free. Jennifer stood in one of the medical bays, watching a young Kelvor child no more than 6 years old sleep peacefully for perhaps the first time in her life. A human nurse sat beside her, holding her hand. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from across Council space. Other species are reporting similar liberation operations. Earth has hit 27 facilities in the last 8 hours." "Good," Jennifer said. "How many children?" "Over 80,000 so far." Jennifer closed her eyes. 80,000 children who would never work another 14-hour shift. 80,000 children who would get to be children again. It wasn't enough. There were still millions more, but it was a start. "Set course for Sanctuary Station," she ordered. "These children need proper care." As the Redemption turned toward human space carrying its precious cargo, Jennifer thought about what came next. The Council wouldn't accept this. They would mobilize their fleets. They would come for Earth with everything they had, Let them come, she thought. Let them see what humans become when fighting for the defenseless. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. Humanity might be young. Humanity might be small. But humanity had one advantage that ancient civilizations had forgotten. They still remembered what was worth fighting for. And they would die before they abandoned that. Admiral Richard Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching 3,000 enemy warships appear on his tactical display. The Grand Fleet of the Galactic Council had arrived to crush humanity's rebellion and restore order. They vastly outnumbered the 400 human ships that had gathered to meet them. By all conventional military analysis, this battle would be over in minutes. The Council fleet had more ships, better shields, more powerful weapons. They had been practicing space warfare since before humans learned to make fire. This should be a massacre. Admiral Morrison smiled grimly. The Council was about to learn why humans had been so careful to hide their true capabilities for 15 years. They were about to learn what total war meant to a species that had nearly destroyed itself before reaching the stars. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. He broadcast on the fleet-wide channel. Today we fight not for territory or resources. We fight for children who cannot fight for themselves. Some of you have children back on Earth. Some of you have nieces and nephews. All of you remember what it was like to be young and helpless. Remember those feelings. Remember that every child on every ship we're defending deserves the same protection your families have. He paused, looking at the overwhelming force arrayed against them. The Council thinks this fight is about power. They're wrong. This fight is about whether we're civilized or monsters, and humans have always known which side we're on. All ships weapons free. Show them what we're made of. The Council fleet advanced in perfect formation, a wall of ships that stretched across space. Their commander, a Thelian named Kresh, broadcast a message on all frequencies. Human vessels, you are in violation of Council law. Surrender immediately and submit to judgment. Your species will be isolated but allowed to survive. Continue this aggression, and Earth itself will face consequences. Morrison didn't hesitate. Negative, Kresh. The only consequence Earth cares about is freeing enslaved children. You want to stop us? Come and try. The space between the fleets erupted in fire. Council ships opened up with plasma cannons and particle beams, weapons that could melt through starship hulls. The human fleet scattered, breaking their formation in ways that violated every Council tactical doctrine. Council commanders expected humans to maintain their formation and exchange fire in the traditional manner of space combat. Instead, human ships moved like fighters, darting and weaving with thrust vectors that should have torn them apart. Earth's inertial dampening technology, something they had never shared with the Council, allowed maneuvers that seemed impossible. A human destroyer designated Shadow 7 dove beneath a Council battlecruiser and fired its main railgun at point-blank range. The magnetically accelerated projectile hit at near-light speed, punching completely through the larger ship's shields and hull. The battlecruiser broke in half. Across the battlefield, similar stories played out. Human ships were smaller and had less firepower than their Council counterparts. But they were faster, more maneuverable, and fought with a ferocity that shocked the enemy. Council captains expected orderly combat, where ships traded shots until one side's shields failed. Human captains made suicide runs, rammed damaged vessels, and used tactics that ranged from brilliant to insane. The UES Marathon, its engines destroyed and life support failing, locked onto a Council command carrier and accelerated using emergency thrusters. The captain's last transmission was simple: for the children. The Marathon hit the carrier dead center, and both ships vanished in a ball of fusion fire. But the humans weren't just fighting for revenge. Scattered throughout the battlefield were transport ships, vessels carrying the freed children to safety. Every human warship had one primary objective: protect those transports at all costs. When Council ships moved to intercept the transports, human vessels threw themselves into the path. Captains who would normally preserve their ships for strategic advantage instead sacrificed everything to give the children 10 more seconds, 20 more seconds, enough time to reach the jump point and escape. Admiral Morrison watched his fleet being whittled down. They had destroyed or disabled 400 Council ships, but they had started with fewer vessels to begin with. The math was against them. They were going to lose. "Admiral, the last transport is away," his tactical officer reported. "All children are safe," Morrison nodded. "Good. All remaining ships fall back to defensive formation around the Defiant. We're going to hold this position as long as we can. The surviving human ships, barely 100 now, formed up around the flagship. They were battered, their shields failing, their weapons running low on ammunition. But they weren't done fighting. Then something unexpected happened. The Council fleet stopped advancing. Morrison frowned. What are they doing? Sir, we're receiving transmissions from several Council ships. They're withdrawing from the battle. What? Why? His communications officer looked up, surprise on her face. Sir, they're citing moral objections. 6 species have declared they will no longer fight against humans. They're broadcasting that what we're doing is right. Morrison pulled up the transmissions. Ships from the Valorn Concordat, the Thres Coalition, and 4 other species were breaking formation and withdrawing. Their captains were broadcasting messages across Council space, explaining why they refused to fight people who were trying to save children. This is Captain Thresvar of the Concordat ship Harmony. One transmission said, I have watched humans sacrifice themselves to save children that are not even their species. I have seen them die protecting the defenseless. My people have looked away from child servitude for too long. No more. I will not fire upon those who do what we should have done centuries ago. The tide of battle shifted, not because of military tactics or superior weapons, but because of something simpler. Other species were finally seeing what humans saw. They were watching humans die for alien children, and it was forcing them to ask uncomfortable questions about their own civilization. The remaining Council ships pressed the attack, but without the numerical advantage, the battle became more even. Human ships continued to fall, but they took Council vessels with them each time, and always. The humans broadcast their actions across every frequency. They made sure the galaxy saw every battle, every sacrifice, every freed child. In one particularly famous transmission, a human Marine battalion was surrounded on a slave processing world. They had evacuated 5,000 children, but couldn't break through to their extraction point. Command ordered them to leave the children and save themselves. The battalion commander, a woman named Sarah Rodriguez, gave a response that would be taught in human military academies for centuries. Negative command. We don't leave children behind. If we die defending them. Rodriguez out. The galaxy watched as that battalion held against overwhelming odds for 6 hours. They built barricades. They rationed ammunition. They told stories to the scared children huddled behind them, keeping their voices calm even as enemy fire tore through their positions. Not a single Marine survived when the reinforcements finally arrived. But every single child was saved. Earth declared them all heroes. The freed children were given honorary citizenship in the Marines' home countries. Statues were commissioned. Their names were written in stone on monuments across human worlds. But more than that, their sacrifice resonated across the galaxy. Species that had never questioned child servitude began protesting on their own worlds. Underground movements formed. Slaves revolted, inspired by human broadcasts showing what freedom looked like. The Galactic Council discovered that maintaining an empire built on child labor became difficult when half the galaxy was questioning whether that empire deserved to exist. 18 months after humanity's first liberation operation, the Council was fracturing. 40 species had withdrawn, declaring they would no longer participate in child servitude. Internal rebellions consumed another 20. The Grand Alliance that had ruled the galaxy for millennia was tearing itself apart. Admiral Morrison, promoted and decorated, stood in his new office on Earth. Through the window, he could see children playing in a park. Human children alongside Kelvor, Thres, Valorn, and dozens of other species. Children who laughed and played and were allowed to be children. Admiral, his aide said, entering the office, the Council has sent a peace proposal. Morrison took the document and read it. Complete abolition of child servitude. Surrender of all enslaved children for immediate liberation. Full reparations. Criminal prosecution of anyone who had profited from the practice. They agree to everything, Morrison said in wonder. Yes, sir. They're broken. Half their species have abandoned them. The other half are dealing with internal collapse. They have no choice. Morrison thought about the cost. 50,000 human soldiers dead. 100 ships destroyed. Earth's economy in ruins from the war effort. But 8 million children freed. 8 million children who would never work another day in servitude. Tell the Council we accept, he said quietly. And tell our liberation forces to prepare for final operations. Every child. We're bringing home every single one. His aide saluted and left. Morrison turned back to the window, watching the children play. Humanity had paid a terrible price, but some things were worth any cost. The galaxy had learned its lesson: never harm children in the presence of humans. Because humans, 3 years after Commander Sarah Chen first witnessed child slavery in the Vacrine facility, she stood in a garden on New Haven, one of the sanctuary worlds humanity had established for freed children. The air smelled of flowers that had been brought from a dozen different worlds, carefully cultivated to grow together in harmony. Around her, children played. So many children. Human children alongside Kelvor, Thres, Valorn, and species whose names Sarah was still learning to pronounce. They ran through the gardens, laughing in languages that translator devices struggled to keep up with. They were just being children, something many of them had never been allowed to do before. Sarah was no longer a commander. After the war, she had resigned her military commission and joined the Sanctuary Corps, an organization dedicated to caring for the freed children. Millions of humans had made similar choices. Teachers, doctors, counselors, engineers, people who wanted to help rebuild lives that had been shattered. Ambassador Chen, a voice called. Sarah turned. Despite leaving the military, she had been given a new title: Ambassador for Child Welfare, representing Earth and the new galactic order that was slowly forming from the ashes of the old council. A young Kelvor woman approached. She was perhaps 20 years old now, though Sarah remembered her as a terrified 6-year-old pulled from a processing facility. Her name was Kira, and she had become one of the first graduates of the sanctuary education programs. Kira, Sarah smiled. I thought you were on Centauri Station this week. I came back early. I wanted to talk to you about something. Kira hesitated, her scales shifting color in a way that indicated nervousness. I've been accepted to the University of Mars medical program. Sarah felt pride swell in her chest. That's wonderful. You'll make an excellent doctor. I want to help other freed children, Kira explained. I remember what it was like. The fear, the pain, the confusion when humans came and told us we were free. I didn't even understand what free meant. She looked at Sarah with large eyes. I want to be able to help the way humans helped me. Sarah pulled Kira into a hug, the kind of physical affection that would have been unthinkable between species before the war. You're already helping just by being who you are. You're proof that the war wasn't in vain. The war, such a small word for what had happened. 18 months of conflict that had reshaped the galaxy. 50,000 human soldiers dead. 100 ships destroyed. But also 8 million children freed. 40 species withdrawing from the Council. A complete reformation of galactic society. Earth had not rejoined the Galactic Council. That institution, built on foundations that included child slavery, could not be reformed. Instead, something new had been born. The Covenant of Innocence. 20 species had signed the founding charter, agreeing to a simple principle: children were precious regardless of species, and their protection was civilization's highest calling. More species joined every month. Not all of them had been involved in child servitude. Some had simply looked away for too long. Others had been victims themselves. But all of them agreed that the old way was wrong, and a new path was needed. Sarah walked with Kira through the gardens, past classrooms where children learned mathematics and art and history, past playgrounds where they ran and climbed and experienced the simple joy of being young, past medical centers where patient doctors treated not just physical injuries, but the deep psychological wounds that slavery had left. They passed a memorial wall, and Sarah stopped. Carved into black stone were 50,000 names, every human who had died in the Liberation War. Below the names was a simple inscription: they died so children could live free. I come here sometimes, Kira said softly. I read the names. I try to imagine who they were, what they loved, what they dreamed about. She touched the stone gently. Why did they do it? Why did humans sacrifice so much for us? Sarah had been asked this question 1,000 times by freed children from 100 species. She still wasn't sure she had a perfect answer. Because a long time ago, she said slowly, humans nearly destroyed themselves. We fought wars that killed millions. We hurt each other in terrible ways. But eventually we learned something important. We learned that we measure civilization not by how we treat the powerful, but by how we treat the defenseless. Children, the sick, the vulnerable. If we protect them, we're civilized. If we exploit them, we're monsters. But we weren't human children, Kira pointed out. Most of the children you saved were from species you had never even met before. Sarah smiled. That's the thing we learned. It doesn't matter what species a child belongs to. A child is a child. They deserve safety, love, education, the chance to grow up and become whoever they want to be. When we saw children being hurt, we couldn't just walk away. We're not perfect. Humans have done terrible things throughout our history, but on this one issue we knew we were right. They continued walking until they reached the central plaza. A fountain stood there, depicting children from 50 different species playing together. It had been designed by some of the first freed children, working with human artists. A group of dignitaries was gathered near the fountain. Representatives from the Covenant species, along with observers from former council worlds that were considering joining. They were here for a ceremony, one that happened every month now. Sarah saw Ambassador Marcus Webb among them. He was older now, the war had aged him, but he stood tall. Beside him were military officers, civilian leaders, and dozens of freed children who had grown into young adults. Ambassador Chen, Marcus called. We're ready to begin. Sarah joined the group as 12 ships appeared in the sky above. They were transport vessels, and as Sarah watched, they began landing at the spaceport beyond the gardens. She knew what they carried. Another 1,000 freed children, the latest group liberated from former slave facilities. The war had been won, but the work wasn't finished. There were still facilities operating in the fringes of space, hidden stations where the practice continued in defiance of the new order. Covenant forces hunted them down one by one, liberating children and bringing them to places like New Haven. The ships landed, and ramps extended. Sarah moved forward with other sanctuary workers ready to greet the newest arrivals. The first child appeared at the top of the ramp, a small being with 4 arms and fur that shimmered blue in the sunlight. The child looked terrified. Sarah climbed the ramp slowly, kneeling when she reached the child. Hello, she said gently. My name is Sarah. We're humans from Earth. You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you anymore. The child stared at her with huge eyes. Safe, safe, Sarah promised. She had made this promise to thousands of children now. Come on, let me show you where you'll be staying. We have food and clean clothes and warm beds. And tomorrow, if you want, you can play with the other children in the garden. The child hesitantly took her hand. Behind them, more children emerged from the ships. Sanctuary workers moved forward to greet each one, offering comfort and reassurance in a dozen languages. As the sun set over New Haven, Sarah stood with Kira and watched the newest children being led to temporary housing. They would be scared tonight. They would have nightmares. Many would struggle to understand that they were truly free. But tomorrow they would wake up without being forced to work. They would eat breakfast without fear. They would take their first steps into a life where they were valued, not for what they could produce, but simply because they existed. Do you think it was worth it? Kira asked quietly. All those humans who died. All the destruction. Was it worth it? Sarah thought about the 50,000 names on the memorial wall. She thought about the ships destroyed, the lives disrupted, the cost humanity had paid. Then she looked at Kira, standing beside her as a free person about to become a doctor so she could help others. Yes, Sarah said simply. It was worth it. That evening, Sarah attended a dinner with the Covenant representatives. They discussed matters of galactic importance, trade agreements, technology sharing, security cooperation. But the conversation kept returning to one subject. What to do about the remnants of the old council. 20 species remained loyal to the old ways, hiding in isolated regions of space. They still practiced slavery. They still held children as property. The Covenant debated whether to pursue them or let them wither in isolation. We should finish what we started, argued the Thres representative. Every child deserves freedom, but at what cost? Countered the Valorn ambassador. We've fought one devastating war already. Can we afford another? Sarah listened to the debate and finally spoke. Humanity learned something during our darkest times. Evil flourishes when good people do nothing. If we know children are suffering and we choose to look away because it's convenient, what does that say about us? The room fell silent. Then Marcus stood. Ambassador Chen is right. We fought this war because we believe children deserve protection. That belief doesn't change based on how convenient it is. The Covenant was founded on a principle. Children are precious. If we abandon that principle, we're no better than the old council. One by one, the other representatives nodded. The decision was made. The liberation would continue until every child was free. Later that night, Sarah returned to the